All right, so the topic of today's webinar is Scale Up Your Impact, Fostering Community Partnerships through NYSD. I had shared with National 4-H some of the things that we did here in West Virginia last year, and they thought this could be a great discussion for other states who might want to emulate something similar, even at a small scale, because we really learned some valuable information from doing this last year. It was just sort of a little bit of a whim, but the impacts and benefits we got from it were far greater than we had expected. All right, so my name is Dr. Jen Robertson-Honecker. I am the State STEM Specialist for WVU Extension's 4-H program. Joshua Meadows would be my co-presenter. He actually was heavily involved with this project last year and helped me develop these slides. However, right now we're running 2 camps here on campus for middle schoolers, a STEM and agri-STEM camp. So he's actually with kids teaching them the science behind the zip line today and taking them on zip line tours. So he couldn't join me. Again, this is loosely related to Game Changers in that this is all about National Youth Science Day. And if you haven't checked out the new National Youth Science Day Challenge, Game Changers, I highly recommend you do so. It's a really engaging kit. Again, following up with computer science. However, it can both be used with kids who did it last year and those who didn't. We've really put a lot of effort into it once again about making sure that it is a entry-level computer science so that everyone can find success. Those are on sale right now, there's a lot of information on the 4-H website. So I just thought, there could be a few people on the webinar today who aren't very familiar with what NYSD is, so I thought I'd throw a little slide in here for that. So 4-H National Youth Science Day, or NYSD, is pretty much what I'll call it throughout the rest of this webinar, was initiated in 2008 with the goal of sparking an early youth interest and leadership in science. And it's always, the kickoff is in October, which is the start of our club year. So it coincides with the start of the 4-H program year, and it really serves as our national rallying event for year-round 4-H science programming. The thinking being that if we kick off at the beginning of the 4-H program year with a fun science activity, that clubs and volunteers and field faculty will continue to bring STEM into their programs throughout the year. We are now in its 12th year, and it has become the largest single national science activity in the country. Not everyone does it on the same day. Now there used to be an actual day, hence the name. It's now focused really on the entire month of October. However, as you'll see in my project here, we really encouraged both field faculty as well as teachers and librarians to look at October through the beginning of December, because the beginning of December happens to be Computer Science Education Week. It's typically around the second week in December, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But NYSD really brings together youth, volunteers, and educators from not only our 106 land-grant colleges and universities, but also Cooperative Extension System to perform an interactive experiment, or nowadays it's more of an engineering challenge rather than an experiment itself. And we have really tried to make it a bridge to groups that aren't very familiar with 4-H, to let them know about what we are and what we do. I don't know how it is in your states, but here in West Virginia, there's very much still a stereotype that 4-H is cows and plows, as we like to say here. And while ag and showing at fairs is still a very large part of what we do here in West Virginia, there's so much more. We have 100 or so kids involved in robotics. We have camps around coding and STEM and agri-science. We've got county groups that are running spin clubs around science. So we really wanted to let our state know that we're so much more than what they might think. Past themes have really run the gamut on different types of topics, but more recently, as you can see, sort of looking at 2016 and on, it's been focused more on the T side of STEM and the E side of STEM, with 2016 being drone discovery, 2017 incredible wearables, and 2018 and 2019 computer science through Code Your World and Game Changers, both of those last two being sponsored by Google. And what I think is really interesting about these more recent activities is that it really shows how 4-H is on the cutting edge of where education is going. Here in West Virginia, computer science has really become one of those hot topics that our communities are focused on. Our teachers really want extra activities and professional developments in. Parents are seeking it out. And even more so, our legislators and government within the state. Recently, our governor in February wrote a bill requiring computer science to be taught at every single grade. The problem is that right now our Board of Education isn't providing professional development in these areas. A few at the high school level, but really not at the elementary or even middle school level. So teachers are really at a hard spot here in knowing that they're supposed to be covering these areas. They don't feel comfortable with covering it, but there is definitely eagerness to do so. So in the past, I've been with WVU and our extension program here for just over 6 years. So my very first NYSD was Maps and Apps. In fact, I started just a couple weeks before the kits came out. And so what we've tried to do here in the beginning was, and I know that even prior to my coming here, we were doing NYSD since its inception in 2008. So we tried to secure funding each year to supply NYSD kits for all of our 55 counties here in the state. Some years we've had a little bit more money than others to provide more than one kit, but at least getting a kit per county here in West Virginia. Additional activities and support would include, sometimes I would develop supplementary activities if the kit was something that was a little bit more technical and they wanted to also offer something maybe in a fair setting or something with a much larger group of kids than the kit would supply for. I tried to provide youth evaluations, training and resources. And then we also direct various NYSD events here at the state level, going out to schools, coming to other counties and so forth. Through these endeavors, typically we would reach about 1,500 youth throughout the state each year in October. And again, that's not just me. I would be a very small portion of that number. That 1,500 would be spread amongst my colleagues here in the state and primarily through our county-based field faculty. I do see a question here. It says, hi, it told you the survey was closed. Okay, well, I apologize for that. I will look into that last registration to see if you can still register for it, and I'll make sure I send that out in the email later today after the webinar is done. All right, so what did we do differently in 2018? Well, 2018 just happened to be the first time we had ever been a part of the NYSD process. We co-wrote Code Your World with Google and National 4-H. And so knowing that this was something that we were very excited about and we really wanted to share it with our state, we decided to work to procure funding to supply kits more than just our field faculty. And in the beginning, I would say, you know, our largest goal was to say, hey, look at what we did, and we would really like to share this with you and with as many youth as possible. When we did this, we reached out to our state teachers, so that would be primarily teachers in 3rd through 8th grade, librarians, and after-school providers. We are very lucky here in the state of West Virginia. Our state after-school network is actually part of our extension program. So my colleague is the person who runs the West Virginia State After-School Network. Every single state has an after-school network, and if you're not already working with them, I highly recommend it. It's a very beneficial collaboration. In all, we were able to give away 400 kits, and we'll talk more about that distribution in just a second. And our objectives beyond just saying, hey, look at what we did, were to enhance current 4-H computer science efforts by introducing our professionals to the Scratch and Google CS First platform, which was really interwoven in the Code Your World activities. Because again, we know that legislators in our state are really excited about this. And each of our counties have to report to their county commissions, and that's how they get funding. That's how we at the state level get funding. And we want to show them that we're at the cutting edge. We know that they're excited about computer science. They want it for the youth in their communities, and we're here providing it. So if we could really get our field faculty engaged and feeling comfortable with computer science, we know they're more likely to go out and provide it well beyond NYSD. But even more so, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to expand the exposure and reach of 4-H and NYSD by creating relationships with our non-4-H youth organizations, really breaking those stereotypes of what we do and what we can provide for our communities. So how we disseminate these kits in the state, for the faculty within Extension, that really didn't change at all. I am very lucky in that we have an annual meeting where all of our 4-H field faculty from across the state come together, and it happens to be in September every year. So I'm one of those that use what you have, right? Rather than creating something new, use opportunities you have built into your system. So that annual meeting is a wonderful way for me to have all of those kits there, hand them directly off to our agents, and provide training when the schedule allows. And it typically does. So faculty and staff who are attending annual meeting could also register for training. So I offered 2 different hour-long trainings on the animated name activity within the CS First and Scratch platforms. I think I've had about 40 people attend the 2 different sessions in total. We also had an opportunity to meet together as a 4-H unit, and I was allowed 30 minutes to do a face-to-face training on Code Your Dance activity. I will say that one of the things I've always done with NYSD is that, there tend to be multiple activities within the kit. So I like to spend time with the kit ahead of time, thinking about which of the activities in this kit are my colleagues more likely to use. What are the ones that give a broader range of different types of youth, allow them to work with various numbers easily, which are the ones that are really the go-to that the kids are going to love. And knowing that last year's kit had 4 different activities, and rather than just trying to fly through all 4 of them, I focused on just those 2, because I knew animated name was the one that people, when they got in front of kids, it's always the one that was a bit more intimidating, but it was the one that was going to really teach kids coding, and it was going to be the thing that was really exciting for our communities. Code Your Dance was another one that I knew the kids would really love, and it could be used in a lot of different ways. So if you're one that also does trainings and sort of train the trainer activities for your faculty, I highly recommend that you do that. Look for the ones that you think are going to be the most easily used. For this year, for Game Changers, I will be focusing on the first part of Pitch Your Passion for our agents, and the Hack Your Harvest board game, because I know that one's a lot of fun. We field tested both with a lot of kids, and it also has a lot of flexibility. We did Hack Your Harvest from grades, everything from 3rd grade through 12th graders, and all of them really enjoyed it. So for my field faculty within 2018, we ended up giving 140 kits, 2 per county, so it was about 110, and then the other we distributed through various state organizations like the West Virginia State After School Network, and we held on to several here at the state office because we ran a lot of events in and around the surrounding counties. Now, the part that was new for us was disseminating these kits to teachers, after-school providers, and librarians. I have to admit, this was what I was most nervous about. Like, how am I going to get these? This is a great idea, but how am I going to get these kits to the people? It was far easier than I thought. And I'll tell you, we'll get to that eventually when we get to logistics. The hardest part was actually something that you probably wouldn't even think of. In the end, it wasn't too bad. But how we did this is, first of all, I had to get the word out, right? So I needed to get this out in front of educators. I did wait until I didn't even send anything out until mid to late August, because I used to be a public school educator. I know they're not looking at their emails until right before or right after school starts. So I didn't even waste my time. Once we got to the start of the school year, most counties were in, or the teachers were at least reporting to clean up their classrooms, I sent this out through several statewide listservs. And every state's going to be different, but each of you should have your own Science Teachers Association. So there's the National NSTA Science Teachers Association, and then every state has their own. Ours is the West Virginia Science Teachers Association. I reached out to the president. I happen to be a member, so that wasn't too difficult. Said, hey, I have this great opportunity. Here's the email. Here's a online registration link. Please send this out to all of your members. We also have a NASA Education Resource Center here in West Virginia. I do believe that most states also have that. They happen to have a listserv, 7,000 people, and that's everything from teachers, homeschool providers, librarians, you know, a huge list of people that work with the community, including 4-H community members. They sent it out, and then I reached out to our state library association, as well as working with our West Virginia State After School Network. In the email, it talked about what is Code Your World. I really emphasized the fact that this was an activity geared to for 3rd through 8th grade youth, that it was a entry-level computer science activity. So that meant that kids without any experience, excuse me, in coding, and adults without any experience facilitating or doing computer science could lead it. And that the facilitator guide had everything they needed in there, including, you know, step-by-step instructions and a script that they could read aloud to the kids, as well as videos that sort of walk them through it. Again, trying to make them feel comfortable with the fact that they could definitely lead this and have success with their kids. On the survey that I collected, so all of that was in the email, sort of getting, that was the tease, hey, you know, please click on this link, please register for a free kit. Once they clicked on the link, I took information about, what are you? Are you a teacher? Are you an after-school provider? Are you a librarian? I collected their email and mailing address, the youth demographics, so what grades they thought they would be teaching the activity to, the estimated number of kids they thought they would reach as well. I will tell you that I really wanted to focus on impacting the greatest number of kids. So when I set out these emails, I did note that if they were a teacher, they should use their state K-12 email address, and that the mailing address should be their school. Same way for after-school providers, it should go to the after-school location, and librarians to the library, as well as using their, they typically have their own library email. And for homeschooling parents, if they happen to be on any of these listservs, I told them, we still want to make this available for you, but if you want to do this, you need to coordinate with your local library, because it really needs to be available to the public. And I didn't want to send kits off to specific home address, not knowing if it would just be the children in that house that got to participate. So I did also put a little thing at the end of the email and the Qualtrics saying, hey, we really want you in receiving this free kit. You know, there's a little bit that we want from you. We want you to strive to do at least one of the activities in this kit with at least 10 kids between October 1st and last year, I think the last day of Computer Science Education Week was maybe around December 9th or 10th. And after you do it, we have another link where we'll have you submit an evaluation. We'd love to have at least one photo. It doesn't have to be of kids' faces. It could be behind the kid or a picture of the computer work that they did. And that was sort of our way to say, hey, we really want to provide you with this, but here are some easy things we'd like to have back in return. Not making it too harsh, but also letting them know that it wasn't just a free box, that they really needed to use it. We had hoped to give out just 200 kits to teachers, and I really wondered if anyone, maybe I'll only get 50 registrations. I opened it up, the registration was available right before the weekend of Labor Day, and I came in on Tuesday after Labor Day weekend, and I already had over 250 requests, more than I had kits to give away, which was a very happy surprise. So it necessitated buying additional kits. They were mailed out in mid-September using a UPS batch file shipping system, which I'll explain in a little bit. And in all, to the teachers, we distributed 260 kits. Most of that went to schools, just a few to public libraries. The second most represented group were after-school programs. So here's a distribution map of the counties. We reached all 55 counties. You can see extension offices, of course, we hit every single one of those, so that was a fairly large representation. Schools were by far the biggest, and those were primarily 3rd through 8th grade, although I did have people working with younger and older groups, a couple libraries, and several extension offices. I will say also that as we were going through the list of those had registered, there were often, like one elementary school, 12 different teachers registered for a kit. And since we wanted to reach as many people as possible, sometimes we had to ask teachers to share. So for that particular school, I think we gave away 6 to 8 kits, and we said, hey, to the whole group in an email, we're so glad you registered. Here's 6 to 8 kits, or whatever the number was. Please share with each other. The materials are reusable, and any consumables you might need, you can print from the included USB. So there were a couple after-school sites for which we had to do that as well. I will get to how many youth we reached and sort of the impact data on this in just a minute. But I also wanted to mention that I'm able to train our agents because of the annual meeting, and that works out really well. But part of this was not going to be me traveling across the state, training teachers and really twisting their arms to make sure that they did this in front of their kids. Because I'm just one person, I didn't have the means to do that. So it just wasn't feasible. But I did want to make them feel comfortable and more likely to use it. So what I did is, once we had the full list of who had registered and we started putting together how we were going to mail these out, is I sent an email to the participating teachers letting them know a kit was on their way to them and going out in the mail. And within that email, I once again reiterated that everything they need is in the box. Step-by-step facilitator guide with the teacher scripts and all the things that they needed. I provided links to all of the archived training webinars so they could go back and watch the same things that our field staff had watched to help prepare themselves. I also, since I had done this a couple times, shared tips and tricks on how to succeed in the classroom with these activities, and also provided my contact information should they call up with any questions. Again, computer science is such a hot topic right now. Teachers really want to show that they're doing this with their kids. So I really didn't need to sell it to them. And I didn't need to twist their arms to get them to be involved. I had far more participation from the teachers who received kits than I did my field staff, who both received kits and received training. And because having been a public school educator, we are very used to just getting a box and saying, use it, and not getting training or hand-holding to do so. So I think this is something that teachers were not only really excited about, but they're used to, and they were ready to take it and go. It's also nice that NYSD aligns really well with the National Lights On After School program, and which happens in October. So after school providers, I would mention that, hey, this is a great thing you could bring out during my National Lights On After School, and also Computer Science Education Week coming at the tail end of that in December. Last year in 2018, as well as in 2019, the facilitator guide includes the next generation science standards as well as CETA standards. So teachers don't even have to look that up. It's in the very back of the guide for them. All right, so people receive the kits, now what? Of course, part of its extension is collecting data and finding out what were the impacts of this particular activity. So everyone who received a kit, educators, librarians, extension agents, everyone was sent a link to an online survey in December. I started actually sending it out probably in mid-November saying, hey, I realize not all of you have done your activities yet. You have until December 10th. That's great. But here is a link in case you've already done your work. That was also a great reminder for those who hadn't used it yet that like, oh yeah, I've got about 4 to 6 weeks left to do this activity. And then I would send them a follow-up reminder again when we got to that last date in December. Of the 400 kits we gave out, and actually at that time I think we had only given out about 365. We continued to give out some kits later on for the state level activities in the after school network beyond December, but 113 educators from 40, and some of those were agents as well and after school providers from 44 counties responded. The survey also included several evaluation questions on the kit and the activities, as well as questions about how they use the kits and their comfort level after doing Code Your World. Did they feel more comfortable with CS, and were they more likely to do these types of activities? So if we look at the response data here, you can see that 44 counties were represented. We also got 10 statewide programs to submit data. The vast majority of that information came from schools, or that's where the event location was, because some of our agents also do it in schools. We had about 14 libraries, 22 after-school sites, 15 4-H clubs or 4-H events, and 4 other. The other included homeschool groups, Girl Scouts, an outdoor classroom, and a child care center. I also wanted to note that one of the schools that participated in the activity was the West Virginia School for the Deaf, which I was really excited about, and I'm really hoping that they can be involved again this year. In total, from the distribution of these kits, over 7,390 youth in West Virginia participated in Code Your World activities. And now that is spread out across 399 specific events or classes. I also collected data on how many different activities they used. So many of them only did one, but quite a few did 2 or more, including 14 groups that did all 4. Most of them did animate a name, which to me is very exciting because, again, that's really the more authentic coding activity that the kids really love because they're designing something unique and creative of their own design. The second most used activity was Code Your Dance, followed by Artificial Intelligence and Color Your World. So, and I apologize for this being so tiny and a little bit unclear, but I also wanted to know about what the teachers and educators, many of these being first-time coders, what they thought about the activity and how likely they were to use computer science again. So of the 113 that submitted, 103 said they felt more comfortable teaching computer science concepts after having used Code Your World. 108 said they were more likely to do other computer science activities. More than half of them shared their kit with others, but not everyone, and that's okay. Most of them said that they were 111 out of 113 said that they would use their Code Your World kit again. And I will say we did design Code Your World as well as Game Changers to be highly reusable. I used my kits with 300 kids last year, I think. And most of them were interested in not only learning more about what we're doing here in 4-H in West Virginia, but also receiving additional Science Day kits. There were also some free answer questions where I just had them, anything else you'd like to share with us. And the comments were so great. Just people talking about how much the kids enjoyed the activity, how they never thought that they could teach computer science, but it made them feel comfortable and they just really enjoyed it. And they loved making their own computer science coding activities within CS First. So again, just a summary there, we did reach 7,390 kids through the 113 return surveys. And because it only constituted about 35% of those that received a kit and those saying that they planned to use it again, we estimate that well over 10,000 youth in West Virginia participated in Code Your World directly because of the kits that we supplied. It also offered an excellent opportunity to highlight our programming to the state. And many of those teachers are looking forward to this year in 2019 when we hope to give out 500 kits and reach even more youth. However, this is what I didn't expect, some real additional benefits for us here in West Virginia. So when those kits were mailed out, I sent an email to our county extension agents. And actually, this was a suggestion from one of my agents saying, hey, I'd love to know what schools or libraries or after-school programs in my county got a kit. And so I thought, that's a great idea. I've got this data. It comes out in an Excel file, so it'll be really easy for me to collate that and just email it out to all of our field staff. So I did so. I organized it by county because that was one of the things I had them choose as they were registering. And I included the teacher's name, the school, and their email contact information, sorted that out and sent the file to all of our field staff. And I told our agents in that email to reach out and partner with these educators. And because many of the people that I work with also don't feel comfortable with computer science, or they just like to have somebody else to partner with the first time, or maybe they're not quite sure how they would bring it into traditional 4-H programming, but it might be a little bit easier for a school or a library that already has a built-in computer room, because many of us don't have our own laptops to travel with. So I did that and sent it out for them. And I also let our teachers know that, hey, you know, here's a link to where you can find the extension agent in your county. All of our county extension offices have 2 kits, and maybe you're a little bit nervous and would like to work with them, or maybe there are other teachers that want to do this and you didn't have enough kits to supply to them. So please reach out. This really allowed educators and agents that might otherwise have been apprehensive to try Code Your World on their own to partner and run activities. And many of both my faculty and teachers, because this wasn't on my evaluation as a specific question, self-reported that this partnership was extremely valuable, and they now have new teachers or agents that they can work with and have done other programming since Code Your World and NYSD. So in my mind, that was just an amazing benefit that I wouldn't have expected otherwise. The other benefit of this is I have a listserv of nearly 300 state educators that if I want to announce something that we're doing for schools or something that we're trying to get new youth involved with, I have this group that I can reach out to, and we've established a trust with them that we provide good research-based programming that's successful. Cost and logistics. And I do see I have a question on this too, so I'll go through this slide and then I'll talk about the question in the chat. So the initial 350 kits were purchased during the Shop 4-H pre-sale, which they're not doing this year. I was a little bummed about that. And so I was able to get them for, I think it's about $2 less than cost them in the regular sale. Again, I had more requests than I thought I would, so I had to jump in and buy 50 additional kits following that at the non-sale rate. So in total, across those 400 kits with shipping, it was just under $9,000. That's a big chunk of change. all 400 kits were mailed directly to the state office. And I'll tell you that that's the one thing that was probably the hardest about this, was just knowing where to put 400 kits in the state office. At the time, fortunately, we had an empty office. This time, we're talking about, you know, spreading it amongst multiple offices in the hallways. What I thought would be the hardest part of this was actually one of the easiest, and that was to mail out those by simply because I had taken this up through Qualtrics, and the data came out in an Excel file. Online, UPS has what they call a batch file system, where you submit your Excel data as a CSV, and it automatically puts it into separate printable pieces of paper that you then just slide on one of the inside of those little sticky clear pouches, and I put those directly on the outside of the NYSD boxes. So the kits came to me in giant boxes filled with, I can't remember how many kits in one, but then we mailed them out directly in the sealed NYSD boxes. I didn't need to put any other box around it. So that was really easy. We would make about 50 at a time, put them in our basement where UPS would come. They would come at the end of the day, pick up the 50, and then the next day we'd have another 50. So within, you know, a week, we had already mailed out all 260. So again, fortunately in my state, I was able to personally hand off the kits to our extension faculty. There is a cost to mailing, of course, and that accounted for roughly $1,000, putting the entire cost of the project at right around $10,000. So the question here is, they'd love to know what kind of funding options for this. I was very lucky, well, in that we wrote Code Your World. There is a financial side to that. So I used some of the funding we got for writing Code Your World to do this activity. I also reached out to our provost office and said, hey, this is a great art, you know, WVU is written right on the side of the box, and computer science, our legislators know that's really important. So this is going to look good for us as a university to say, hey, we are providing what you want for our communities. However, this is also something that we've discussed with local businesses who are very eager to help with this. Some of them are very community-based, so they would only provide funding for schools in their district. Some are, you know, throughout the state, and we're willing to provide, you know, $500, $1,000 to buy kits for the entire state. This year, our kits that we're giving out, the 500 kits, will be provided through Mylan Pharmaceuticals, through their Mylan STEM Care program, who want to make this available for teachers and librarians and after-school sites. So I think that there's a couple different ways to do that, but probably the most successful would be companies. And if you wanted to do it as large as I did, multiple companies might be required to do that. So just in summary, WVU Extension Service 4-H Youth Development distributed 400 Code Your World kits to both our faculty as well as school teachers, after-school sites, and librarians across the state of West Virginia. With minimal training or additional resources, this initiative resulted in more than 7,000 state youth participating in one or more Code Your World activities between October and December. Again, that was direct results from evaluation data. I think 7,390 or so, but we really estimate that closer to 10,000 likely participated, and that those teachers or faculty did report their data. The distribution introduced new audiences to 4-H, and then most importantly, fostered new relationships between constituents and their community-based WVU Extension faculty members. Although this model and the cost probably isn't feasible for all states, right? Like, you know, if you're a county staff, you know, 400 kits, where are you going to put them? Where are you going to get the funding for that? However, I actually think it'd be most successful at the county-based level, because you have businesses right there who know how important this is. And we're going to put stickers right there on the box. This kit, purchasing this kit was funded by Mylan STEM Care, and you could do the same for your community. Even doing, you know, 20 kits in a smaller area is going to be really beneficial for you, and I think you're going to get similar results, just on a smaller scale. And I was really unsure that people would want this, and it just blew my mind how excited teachers were, how little extra help they needed. They just, getting that free kit was all they wanted and all they needed to then just run with it, because they're really used to doing similar things. And we got a lot of great press too. I would get calls from local towns and municipalities. And we hear the kids are about doing this and that you provide it. Can you give us a little bit more about this initiative? So it was really a great avenue for us to get out what we're doing in 4-H and make those connections and break stereotypes. All right, so that ends my portion here.